So I'm very pleased to be talking with Dr. Daly this morning. It seems to me that he's one of Canada's most outstanding psychologists, and perhaps you could say that about psychologists in the world.
One of the most outstanding psychologists in the world.
I mean, my objection to Ayn Rand's book was that I think there's definitely evidence that many kinds of violent criminal offenders have got something wrong with their brains. Ayn Rand wants to extrapolate to the conclusion that violent criminals, and indeed criminals in general, have got something broken about their brains. And it's like criminality is pathological. Well, criminality is not pathological. People steal for cost-benefit related reasons. The crime is a, if you like, God help us, social construction in the sense that certain behaviors are criminalized by a larger social group in order to deter them, because self-interested individuals would otherwise pursue them. You know, how do you make people stop exploiting others, stealing from others, by criminalizing those activities and imposing penalties? And, you know, there's a rational choice stream of theorizing within criminology that other people like Ayn Rand just dismiss out of hand. No, criminal offenses are pathological.
Yeah.
And I think that's silly.
I agree with Dr. Peterson. Martin Daly is one of the greatest psychologists in the world. And that says something about the state of psychology. Well, first, it's true that there are people who are biological determinists who don't understand the role of the mind, but Daly doesn't understand the role of the mind either. You can see this with this false dichotomy view that is being put onto pathology. So the view here is that pathology is just something that's wrong with you as a meat machine. That's all you are, and if there's something wrong with you, it's just one of your components is broken. That's what pathology is. And the alternative to that is that you're functioning fine, and so whatever you do is just the result of the combination of biological and social deterministic forces acting on you. So both sides here are deterministic. The one side just says, well, you're biologically determined, and if you do something wrong, that's because part of your biology is messed up. And that's what's going on when people commit criminal behavior. And the other side says, the Daly side says, no, that's not what's happening with crime. Crime is an arbitrary social construct, and just because somebody is doing it, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with his biology. That's just how you would act if you were biologically normal in these circumstances. That's just the deterministic social forces impinging upon you. That's just how it works. Now, he makes a show about how he's, oh yeah, I guess social constructionism, as if he means it in some other way. In some way other than the way that people make fun of. No, he does not. He means it exactly in the way everyone else means it. He means crime is just, as he says, it's just an arbitrary construct. It is just a subjective concept. To him, crime means activities that are against the interest of the majority. With interest here defined as God knows what. That itself is subjective, presumably. At the very least vague. If you watch the whole thing, you will see that Daly has Marxist premises. So, well, you can see that in the clip I just showed, with his crime as a result of a cost-benefit analysis view, as if what is motivating criminals is just, well, I mean, if I can rob this TV from Walmart and I can get away with it, then I'm getting the TV without having to pay for it. That is such a dumb, naive, simpleton view of crime. And this is a psychologist, one of the greatest in the world, according to Jordan Peterson. I mean, you know who the best psychologists in the world are? authors. I mean, good authors with good characterization skills. They are applied psychologists. They have to actually understand how people function and in order to present them plausibly. Even if they're just using stock characters or archetypes, you still have to be better than a psychologist in order to do that. I am one of the greatest psychologists in the world. Ayn Rand was certainly the greatest psychologist who ever lived, and that's not even her field. I mean, it's not my field. Now, this isn't saying much. Like, that's not self-aggrandizement. That says more about the pathetic state of the field. Ayn Rand used to say, regarding psychology, we are in the state where philosophy was at the time of Thales. Thales said everything's water. Just based on some simple observations, he probably saw, well, people need water to survive, animals do, plants do, there's the rain cycle, it rains, there's the ocean. So maybe water is what everything has in common. Now, it's that kind of primitive hypothesizing on the basis of scant few observations. That's where we are regarding psychology. It is not this developed, advanced field. Harry Binswanger says the following, and it's true. We are talking about a field that has only in the past few decades admitted the existence of its subject matter. Behaviorism used to be the big thing. It still is. Jordan Peterson's a fan of it anyway. And this is the idea that your mind doesn't matter if it exists at all, and really we just study how people react and how they behave physically. Your mind's a superstition, don't worry about that. That's not what psychology is about. Now, psychology has gotten better with things like cognitive therapy, but we're still very low. So, I mean, this is ideology. This is principles. This is integration. This is philosophy. It's powerful. If you have the right one, it brings revolutionary clarity. If you have the wrong one, it makes you more confused than common sense ever could. And so it's not hard to be one of the greatest psychological minds in the world today. If you just use common sense and introspect, you are at the head of the pack. You are near the front of the race. Because all of the people in the field are running in the wrong direction. They're going the wrong way around the track. So you can be going at a lackadaisical pace, and as long as you're strolling in the right direction, you are one of the greatest psychological minds there is. Anyway, so there is such a thing as diseases that affect your mind and which you had no control over. But there are also pathologies that are the result of your volitional choice. And I think most people most of the time fall into the second category. Their problems do, their psychological problems do, but they're told that the only thing that exists is the first category, so you need pills. I'm not saying you shouldn't take pills if you need them, but I think people don't need them as often as they think they do. And that's not because their problems are an illusion, or subjective, or the mind doesn't really exist. It's because they are the cause of their problems. People don't like to hear that, but if you have a psychological problem, it's probably your fault. I mean, if you're depressed, that is not because there's just something wrong with your brain. I mean, it's not necessarily because of that. Or just because you're in circumstances where that's how you have to be. No, it depends on how you thought about it and how you've acted in your circumstances. You can be in the same circumstances, same brain, and be happy or depressed. Now, when I say the same brain, I mean you had the same brain as a starting point. Your brain isn't going to look exactly the same if you're depressed as it will if you're happy, but what I'm saying is the brain was not the fundamental cause there. It was your free will making changes in the brain. So anyway, just this false dichotomy view is so stupid. The idea that everything is biological, and so anything wrong is pathology, physical pathology, or the view that everything we say is wrong, that's just our interpretation on it. There's no such thing as wrong. So It's not that biology's messing up, it's just that we are subjectively claiming that it's wrong. God, this idea that crime is just an arbitrary categorization to which we attach moral significance as a cynical or evolutionary thing in order to deter people from taking certain actions. As if stealing, robbing a liquor store, there's nothing really different about that from, starting a restaurant. Those are really, there's nothing actually different about those in reality. It's just that most people benefit from the restaurant entrepreneur and they don't from the liquor store robber. And so we just artificially distinguish those arbitrarily, subjectively, and then claim that there's some, we put some moral stigma on robbing the liquor store, even though there really isn't by any objective standard. That's what one of the greatest psychologists in the world believes, according to Dr. Peterson. I mean, greatest, according to Dr. Peterson. It's funny because this guy's actually an example of something Jordan Peterson kind of understands, but not really. This idea that if you were being straight, then postmodernism doesn't really have a viewpoint. But it uses Marxism because that's just what they're falling back on, and that's, in fact, what they were trying to justify. It's involved in what they're trying to justify. And that's what Daly is an example of. He's just a subjectivist, and then, but he falls back on his Marxist premises. Ideas don't matter, it's all just material gain, and then we just rationalize that. I do not recommend you watch this whole thing. Hopefully that's part of the value I'm providing to you as I watch this trash and digest it for you. But anyway, what's funny is Jordan Peterson doesn't understand that that's exactly what he is as a pragmatist, which is what he is, avowedly. Pragmatists just do what works. Well, what works? If you just do what works, you have no principles. You have no way to tell what to do in any situation. So you just fall back on whatever is big in the culture. Which is why Jordan Peterson is just a gross amalgamation of every idea you can find in the culture, every bad one anyway. As I've said elsewhere, people steal as a way of fighting reality. That's what they're doing. They view the law as a proxy for identity, which is itself the rule of existence. So when they steal, they don't care about getting something for nothing, or rather they do, but in a metaphysical sense. It's not just, I want this TV without paying for it. It's, I want to prove that I don't have to pay for things. In general, in principle. This is why they are always more concerned with getting away with it than with whatever it was. And I don't mean just they have to get away with it in order to enjoy their spoils. What I mean is, they actually don't care that much about what they're stealing. They don't even go into it caring about that. It's more a test for them. Can I get away with this? And if I can, that means I can do whatever I feel like. Reality doesn't bind me. Everybody faces the choice at some point, my feelings and wishes, the subjective products of my consciousness don't change reality. So now I can respond to that in one of two ways. I can conform to reality, or I can refuse to and wage war on reality. Now, one manifestation of refusing to is theft. It's just a way of saying, I have to prove to myself that I don't have to follow reality and I can get away with it. And it's also a way of hurting the people who do stay loyal to reality. The people running the businesses, the people from whom these creeps are stealing. There is a black and white difference between the hedge fund manager and the liquor store robber. It's not just, well, they're both just doing what's in their self-interest and their rational self-interest in their context. No. The hedge fund manager is looking at reality and acting in harmony with it in order to create values in a non-contradictory way. The hedge fund manager is working with reality. The liquor store robber is waging war against it. And everyone else who is working in harmony with it. And the hedge fund manager is working in harmony with it and helping everyone else who is his ally with reality. Anyway, what I really wanted to get across here is just how awful psychology is today. And how even the people regarded as the best in the world are worse than your average person in this field. So just keep that in mind and don't give any kind of deference to somebody just because they studied psychology. In fact, that would make me more skeptical of their advice.